Okay, I guess we're live. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining in. Today, I would like to welcome everyone to our weekly live stream. It's a free product people event. Before starting, please remember that you can watch the stream on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch. Also, a reminder that this talk will be recorded and available on YouTube, so feel free to share it afterwards with fellow PMs. You can just head out to our YouTube channel. So, we will have a Slido for this presentation. You can scan the QR code or enter the Slido link and share your questions and insights that we will discuss later in our Q&A session after the presentation. Today's guest will be Matt Winter. Matt leads core payments at Dojo, one of the UK's largest payment acquirers, overseeing authorizations, payment experience, capital operations, and partnerships. He has spent the last decade building and scaling product at some of the most influential consumer and B2B fintechs, including Revolut, Uber, Cleo AI, Moss, and Yellowcard, hiring and leading product teams from seed stage to hyper growth scale ups. He has developed a sharp point of view on what separates great product talent from the merely competent. Today, we will dig into the signals that separate great candidates from polished ones, the interview tactics that surface real judgment, the most common hiring mistakes leaders keep making, and how to build a team that compounds over time. Before we bring in Matt, I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Harun. I have experience in product management and software development, and today I'm associate product management consultant at Product People. So today I will be your host for this live stream, and before going to Matt, I would like to present to you a little bit about what we do in Product People. So, our mission is to help companies discover and deliver great products faster. We offer product ops and transformation acceleration services via our in house PM staff. We also curate free events like this one for one of the biggest M communities in Europe that has over 60,000 members. So, before we start, we would like to know you better with this small question that you can answer on Slido by scanning this QR code. The question for today is: do you have a logo or company on your CV that's more impressive than the work you got to do there? A, yes, that's right. B, no, my best work was at a legendary company. And C, my best product lessons came from a company you've likely never heard of. Let's wait a few minutes for your answers. Meanwhile, Matt, do you have a instinctive first answer for this one?
Hey everyone, and thanks for the warm intro, Harun. I really appreciate it. I do. I'm very biased on the response to this one, but I'm curious to see what all the PMs out there think. I really
Yeah.
am. I'm curious to see where they land. Yeah.
Let's wait a few minutes for the answers. Now, I think the answers are split between A and B. This is very interesting.
It is interesting, and
Yeah.
I think it's kind of leading me to sort of, I think, a punchline we'll get to later, later in the presentation that I want to share with you guys. And maybe with that, shall I sort of like take over the slides and maybe sort of get this going on my side?
Yep, I think we can move on. The final answer is the split between A and B. Let's
Amazing.
go. I think I'll leave the stage to you, Matt, now.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing. So I think, look, if you guys are PMs on the call, that means you've already done the hard work of interviewing for a product management role once before. And I think it's really interesting what you shared about half of us feeling like, yeah, some of the best experience I've got is at really big companies everyone's heard of, and the other half saying, actually, it's companies no one's ever heard of, right, and fly completely under the radar. And I think that's such a powerful signal in and of itself about how we view ourselves and also how hiring managers view us. So I think something that's really strange about product management for me is that we all know privately that the logo on our CV is a terrible measure of how good someone actually is as a product manager. But when we get into the interview room, either as candidates or as hiring managers, as interviewers for PM roles, that's almost exactly what we focus on, right? And before we get into why, I sort of had a second question to everyone, which you're welcome to just drop into the chat of the stream, which is like, why are you here today? Is it because you're sitting here as like a product management leader who's looking to like hire people into your team and build it out? Or are you here because you're trying to figure out how to interview better and what signals some of these top companies are looking out for? I'd love to just hear free form from you guys what you think. If you can't get it into the chat, I'm sure our technical crew will figure out how to do that. But I'm curious to know what you're here for, so I can make sure I help the audience best understand what it is. Cool. Let's see where we land. I got nothing on my side so far.
Just a second, Matt. I will transmit the answers to you.
Amazing. Thank you.
Just a second. We will wait a few minutes for them, or a few seconds.
Got you. All right. Well, I think regardless of where you guys are headed with this, the answer is I think what I'm going to share is relevant for both. Because whether you're looking to make your next big jump in product or you're trying to flesh out the strongest team, the approach is basically exactly the same. I think Harun gave a really good introduction to me, but I thought I'd share a little bit more about myself. My name is Matt Winter, and today I do lead core products or core payments at Dojo. Cool. Maya's looking to transition into PM, actually. Awesome. Well, this is going to be super helpful for you. And Sridhar, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Like, yes, we're going to be looking at that too. So hopefully this is exactly what you guys need and will be super powerful for you. Because I've really spent the last decade of my career building out and scaling products right across fintech, whether that was in sub-Saharan Africa with Uber, including Pakistan and the Middle East, or Mexico, LATAM. I was also the first product hire at Yellow Card, which is a big crypto exchange in that part of the world where we help build out cross-border payments, where I built that product team from scratch. That was the first time in my career I had to figure out how do I choose product managers, not just be one myself, which was really an interesting challenge for me. And since then, I've been really obsessed with this question of like, how do you find the right PMs, right, to fill out your teams, and how do I choose the right teammates? And those are lessons that I've taken to Revolut, to Cleo AI, Moss, and now here at Dojo. And I think, yeah, I've probably filled over 20 plus different product manager roles. I kind of think I've like lost count. And I've interviewed hundreds of candidates from like every single walk of life. And because I've stayed close to those people and I've watched how their careers have grown and how they played out over time, I feel like I have a good idea now of the signals that really matter that you need to show to interviewers, but also interviewers should be looking for. So I thought I would start this off by telling you about the worst hiring decision I ever made as a product manager. And whoop, 6 startups. Nice, man. Iran, Cyprus, Turkey. One of the best PMs I've ever worked with was from Turkey, and he had an absolutely incredible experience. And Iran has got some awesome tech as well. I'll vouch for that. I've worked with guys there who've done some truly exceptional things. So let's get through this. But I think the worst hiring decision I ever made was actually me. because I chased the logo over the signal, and I was definitely the one who is too caught up with the shiny things on CVs instead of focusing on what actually mattered. It's exactly the mistake that I think everyone makes when we hire people or we're trying to put ourselves forward, and that's what this talk is about. So my promise for the next 20 minutes is I'm going to argue that almost everything we screen for in product interviews is just noise and things you should ignore. I'm going to be specific about what we should ignore and then give you 3 things that help actually predict what an excellent product manager looks like and the best way to test for each one and to make sure you can prepare for interviews in the same way. So if you're hiring, you'll leave with a shopper method. And if you're looking to be hired, you'll leave knowing what you're really being assessed on by people like me and others in industry with experience. And I think right now that's probably the most useful thing that you could take away. So most product interviews suck. And I truly believe that. Here's why. I think number one is that we test hypothetical problems and therefore we get hypothetical answers. You guys know how the case study goes. Like, how would you improve Spotify? It feels rigorous, but it's actually theater. A candidate who's never shipped anything can still give you a polished, framework shaped answer because there's nothing at stake and that's not really real. The best case studies reveal what someone has read about in product management. They don't really reveal what someone can actually do. I think number 2 is we tend to interview the golden path. We say things like, tell me about a successful product that you've launched. And of course, they tell you about a win, right? Of course, we've got to present ourselves in the best light. We have a rehearsed one we've prepped before with the person who's organizing the interviews or our friends or just doing our own homework. We've rehearsed it, we've rounded it off. But the truth is, nobody really grows in comfort. And the signal isn't the win, it's actually the mess. We spend a whole hour with an interviewer talking about one path where the candidate looks like they're the best. And then we're surprised when they arrive in the role and things are tricky and they start struggling because the truth is, and you guys will know this if you're in product management, it's never simple and there's no golden path. And number 3, we often over-index on domain experience. They've done fintech. We're a fintech company. It's a perfect match. Go look for candidates who worked in the same thing that we already do. But here's the thing. Every new hire has to learn your business anyway. Your customers are your customers. Your company's constraints are unique to it. And your company's politics that you have to navigate as a product manager are unique to that company. So domain experience shaves a few weeks off that, but it doesn't tell you whether someone thinks well. And we pay a huge premium for a small head start. So let's talk a little bit about things that I think we can ignore. Because if everything I just said is true, I want to be super specific about things that I really don't think matter too much for product professionals to talk about in their interviews and for hiring managers to be actively screening for. The first one is the academic background. I truly believe that product skills are learned in hundreds of different contexts. The degree or their academic background tells you the exams that they could pass when they were at school. But the truth is, some of the best product managers I've ever worked with and hired had backgrounds in food manufacturing companies where they obsessed over the flavor profile that their customers liked and how to source the right ingredients at the best possible cost. At face value, that doesn't look like product management, but those are 2 of the core skills that you need, right? Understanding your market and understanding the constraints of your feasibility context of the product you're managing for. Today, he's now a group product manager at Wise, one of the largest fintechs on the planet. Another one for me, be skeptical of big, impressive companies on someone's CV. It's the logo we all raised our hands about earlier on when I asked the question. At a large company, the truth is a product manager often owns a tiny slice of the surface. They might be responsible for a KYC capture, just one small identity step in a fintech, but the headline will say like global fintech architect. And that's cool. The brand is enormous, but the scope of ownership was probably narrow. And I think, to me, don't reward the logo, ask what they actually helped shape for the firm. And this is almost a bit ironic, but I'm equally skeptical of super scrappy startups, right? The instinct is to swing the other way and over reward hustle culture, but apply the same scrutiny, right? When there are 3 product managers in the whole company, their scope should be pretty big, right? And nobody should understand the customers and the scope more deeply than those PMs. So when a startup PM claims deep mastery over everything, I'm a little skeptical. Expect some hyperbole. It comes with the territory, right? We've all worked at the smaller firms. And you should expect outsized results from them. When you have a small team, 1 PM can make a massive difference. Another thing I would encourage us to do is ignore career breaks. Health and people we love matter more than our work, and a gap is not a red flag, and the right hiring manager won't treat it that way either. I would also ignore short stints because startups implode, scale ups pivot to brand new product bets where maybe your skills aren't irrelevant anymore, and enterprises are laying people off at record rates we have not seen in modern times. So a run of short stints is mostly a story about the market and not necessarily a story about a person and their skills. And I think finally, we should ignore the absolute size of the business impact. Some of us can claim we launched multi-million-dollar products that absolutely revolutionized the game and changed an industry. But the truth is, how much control did you really have over that remit? The number is shaped by the company's gravity far more than by the product position you were put into. And so I think the PM who is responsible for optimizing back-end processes in Office is just as important and can be just as incredible as someone who launched the brand new AI native thing that revolutionized an entire market. So I think let's notice what those all have in common. The logo, the company size, the headline numbers, they're all proxies. We reach for them because they're super easy to read and they're easy to pick up by scanning through a CV. But this is a very thick slice of low signal information. So I guess my question is, what should we be reading instead? Where do we find the signal? And again, to those of you who are already product managers going into it, you know the most important thing is to find the right signals in your market. So here's an idea from Malcolm Gladwell. I'm sure you've seen his books or his incredible podcast series, A Different Size. It's called thin slicing. The finding from his research is that experts often make remarkably accurate judgments, about 90% accurate, even with a very limited pool of information, by using a very thin slice, rather than drowning in more information that often makes judgment worse, not better. And that's our problem in a sentence. We've been trying to take thick slices and hiring for the wrong thing. Logos, case studies, golden path wins. And we often wonder why, we tend to end up in a position where we're either unhappy in the role or the company feels the role is not right for the person either. So the job isn't to gather more information, it's to find the few traits that genuinely predict an excellent product manager and sort of go really thin and deep on those. So I'm going to give you 3 cheat sheets. And that's going to be looking for how they think, how they fight, and how they care or what they care about. So first one, think. This is the most important one to me. It's very close to my heart. First principles thinkers. Why does this matter more than anything that's actually on your CV? Because a product manager who finds the right problem to solve creates a better business outcome than the one who solves the wrong problem beautifully. First principles thinkers get to the root cause super fast. They don't inherit the framing that they're handed, either by the person they took over from, was top-down instructed by their boss, or whatever their past experience tells them. They pull it apart, they rebuild it, and they figure out what's actually true. So here's what the opposite looks like, so that you can spot it, and if you're doing it in an interview. The opposite is a PM who blindly follows best practice, the one who runs through the playbook because it's the playbook. They're following exactly what is in all the amazing product management textbooks out there. They hear the problem, they jump straight to the obvious way, they follow the familiar solution. My argument and my experience has been that PM slows your teams down because they will confidently take you to the wrong place. And that's not great for the team in the long term. So how do you actually test for this? For me, it's the 5 whys. Pick a genuinely complex project from someone's career history and just keep asking why. Why did you build that? Why did that actually matter to the company? What was the constraint you couldn't remove? By the 3rd or the 4th why, the rehearsed answer that you practiced beforehand or the one that you prepared for this really does run out. And at that point, you can start to have an honest conversation about seeing their real reasoning underneath, or whether it was just received wisdom that was given down from them. My personal view here is this helps me figure out whether they're a junior PM or how senior they are. Are they ready to be a group product manager? If they're not thinking in first principles, I can't trust them to manage multiple complex projects at the same time and make good decisions on them. So I think, to my managers out here, this only works if you prepare for the interview beforehand. You've actually got to read the CV of the person properly and pick 2 or 3 of the hardest areas you can kind of identify from their career story and steer the conversation in that direction. Don't let them just walk you down the golden path. And for the individual contributors here, I think when you're the one being asked, don't just perform a framework at me. Like, show me how you reasoned your way to the root of the problem. And the truth is, you probably had a custom approach for every single one of those. There's no perfect one-size-fits-all solution. The framework, to be honest, is the least interesting thing about you because we've all got exactly the same frameworks. Your thinking is unique to you. That's what I really want to see. So predictor number 2. It's how you fight. And that's because I think good PMs cause conflict, whether they want to or not. So let me say something that sounds harsh, but I really think it's true. I think a good PM is going to cause fights. The job is to sit between engineering, product design, your sales organization, the business side, and force decisions through that not everyone is going to like. Mark Abram put it well when he said, managing product is managing tension. Conflict isn't a bug in the role, it is the entire role. And it's there at every level of seniority. Whether you're a junior PM or you go all the way up to chief product officer, you're just managing tension at different altitudes. Sales is never going to agree with design. Design is never going to agree with engineering. And your business and finance leaders are never going to agree with the budgets or the targets that you're putting forward. So to me, the opposite of this is that person who avoids conflict. The opposite is, well, it's not really someone who avoids conflict. I think that's kind of tough. I'd actually reframe it. It's the brilliant jerk. It's the one who wins every single fight by forcing their worldview onto everyone else. They look super effective for 1 quarter because they get great results, but they leave scorched earth behind them. Their engineers are burnt out. Someone feels aggrieved that they weren't heard in a solution to your problem. And by the time you come to the next quarter and you have the next problem to solve, now you're in combat with them and you can't rely on the same tactics that you did before, and you've already lost trust of your delivery team. So I think the capacity to stay in hard tension without either collapsing or steamrolling is really true. So I guess, like, how do you test for that, right? This is not something you're going to write down on your CV typically. But what I sort of tend to do is I don't ask about a project that someone loved. I ask about a project or a situation that they disliked the most, their worst project, the one that went up in flames, that they were not proud of. And I think that's the fastest route to figuring out someone's real conflict style. You'll see in about 90 seconds whether they tend to be the ones who go quiet, the ones who go to war, the ones who start going deeply political, or they get to work on the actual problem and bringing people on the journey by over communicating. And then to do the one thing almost nobody does, managers, I think this one is for you. I think it's like, hold that conflict style up against your most difficult, immovable stakeholder. The one that the PM will actually have to survive. because you're not hiring for an abstract good culture fit. You're hiring for someone who can combat effectively with a difficult stakeholder, who's compatible with real specific people who they're going to have to work with. And they're going to face that tension every week. So I think to be prepared as a hiring manager, it's naming that stakeholder and understanding how they like to communicate and conflict before the interview, not during. And for those of us who are looking to make the jump to our next hiring role, when you're asked about something you didn't like or a project that you wish you'd done differently, please resist the urge to sanitize it. No one's going to judge you for, having a project that went badly, because we've all got them. No one is perfect all of the time. And being honest about it, being specific, actually shows that you're the one with resilience. It shows that you can take a few knocks and you keep going, and you still bring people with you. You don't alienate them. If you give us super polished answers, then we feel like you've got something to hide and you're not being honest. And that again tells us a lot about how you manage conflict. And I think predictor number 3 is care. What actually makes someone tick? And here's why this matters to me so much more than you might think. It's because whether someone succeeds in a role is actually determined by their motivation, not the company setup. You can't buy motivation with a salary. You just can't. Intrinsic motivation is the energy that a product manager spends closing whatever gaps exist between their current abilities and the results and the result that the business needs. It's the difference between that PM I was talking about earlier from Turkey, who started off basically in sort of, I wouldn't say food delivery, but sort of in more restaurateur business, and why they're one of Wise's most amazing PMs today is that they had the guile and they had the ambition to make this happen. And despite the obvious gaps in their CV and their career, they were still one of the best PMs Revolut and Wise has ever seen. Because we all have a deficiency somewhere. You might not have the perfect relevant industry experience. You might not have learned all of the different tactics that you want for customer obsessed product design, or how to do agentic development at scale, the new paradigms. But your motivation is the fuel that remediates that. No fuel, no remediation. And no matter how impressive your CV is or not, it won't matter. And I think this comes from an idea that Marty Keegan has long championed. He's one of the heroes of Mind the Product and has written many seminal books on product management. In case you guys are looking for new literature to read, I highly recommend his new book, The Decision Stack, for example. And he says that we should be looking for missionaries, not mercenaries, because the missionary is driven by the problem itself. They truly care about what they're doing and why. And the mercenary is driven by the title, the comp, the status. I don't really like mercenaries too much. They interview beautifully. They'll probably be the best conversations you ever have as a hiring manager. They appear super motivated. They are incredibly sharp and they do want it, right? But what they want is the reward, not the work. So the first time they hit a really hard problem where there's no glory attached to it, the energy starts sapping, and over time it disappears. You're not going to see that in an interview, but you'll see it in month 4. Once probation's done and you're deep into it, you'll find that the energy is just not there for solving these hard tasks anymore. So how do I test for it? Well, I feel like this one's kind of different because you can't extract it. You actually have to earn it as a company and as an interviewer. I think it's being honest and a little vulnerable yourself. So the candidate kind of drops their script and you have a real authentic conversation between two people. That's the only time you can really discuss what genuinely energizes them and what genuinely drained them in past roles. And check that honesty, the things that come up in that, the things that light them up. Is that actually present in this job? Is that something that I can give them? I think I'll share a very personal story with you guys about one of the most incredible PM candidates I'd ever interviewed. They had had flying recommendations from everyone they had met before me in the hiring process. They'd come from Google and Meta, like Silicon Valley's top companies. They'd followed the interview process. And when I sat down with them as sort of like the final bar raiser to understand whether they were the right PM to bring, you know what they really wanted from the role was to be a people manager. All they really cared about was growing and coaching the next generation of PMs. And despite the fact that we'd sort of been very clear about how this would be a staff PM role, and this was about defining a new product category and leading it individually for a while before that team grew. The honest truth was, when we spoke about it together and we just had an honest conversation, they were the ones who kind of realized that despite the hype and the polished answers and the great CV and the cool stories and super relevant experience, this wasn't actually going to be the thing that fulfilled them and lit them up, right? I couldn't give them that junior PM to mentor and grow. And I didn't want to lie to them and say when that was going to happen. It could be 6 months, it could be never. And I felt that was the fair thing to say. And I think that they had the emotional maturity to say, actually, maybe this is not right for me, I think was the best decision they could make for themselves and also for me. And I believe that was the right one for the team as well. So I think it kind of leads me to my last point for PMs is like, understand your why before you walk in. Like, you've already got the skills. You're in the interview process because they already believe you can do the job. They're trying to find the right person for the job now. And the most important thing you can do is just be honest with yourself. A job that pays well and bores you to death is an extremely expensive mistake for yourself, for your career, and for your loved ones as well. So I kind of wanted to end with some principles for world-class operators. What I've called 7 trades or 7 trade-offs, because we love trade-offs as product managers. And I thought this is something for you guys to take away and sort of like hold on to. And I think the first one is always choose first principles thinking or thinkers, even over PM playbooks. When you're in an interview, it'll set you apart from the peers who are just doing the stuff that all the textbooks say. And when you're choosing teammates, that's the kind of person who you want to have in a room with you, because you will find the right problem to solve so much faster. You don't need someone who's memorized the homework, man. You need someone who can think through novel problems with you. Look for that person. The second one is choose emotional resilience, even over domain expertise. I can probably teach you how to work in a fintech. I bet I could teach you how to work in social media, probably teach you how to work in any environment. No one can teach you emotional resilience, but that's what you need to survive as a PM. And tension is just an inherent part of our industry and our job. And building that and having stories to share about how you've worked on it and acknowledging where you have your faults will be more powerful than anything else. Number 3 is choose intrinsic motivation, even over raw talent. Choose the missionary over the mercenary. Like, talent, you can't direct, and motivation, you can't buy. So it's like, to me, I would rather pick someone who has no business being in an environment, but who really wants to do this thing, over someone with, the perfect on paper capability. Number 4 is like choose scope ownership, even over the size of the logo. What a PM actually shaped and where they shaped it is way more important than the actual company. That is sort of like a heuristic. It's a proxy. You wouldn't use it to estimate your customers. You shouldn't use it to pick your teammates either, or measure yourself. Number 5, choose empirical lessons over headline making companies. The things that you've learned yourself beats the brand that actually learned it. So I think this is, bring your authentic self, show what you've actually learned and the lessons you've made is so much more powerful than any other thing. Number 6, choose PMs who bring the knowledge you don't have, even over industry experience. I think more to my hiring managers, but don't hire your own reflection. Hire the gap in your team. Focus on what's missing, not what you already have. And finally, and this is going to become more and more important in the world of agentic development, and as our skill set and our industry rapidly changes, choose financial literacy even over product craft. Because product craft, sort of the basic frameworks and things like that. I can build it into Claude Code. I can build it into agents. The real superpower here for PMs in the future is going to be how can you quickly collapse all of that best practice thinking into a financial model that makes sense to your stakeholders. Because now more than ever, you're going to be responsible for token budgets, not just engineering hiring budgets. If you're going to get that right, you need to invest more time in financial literacy skills, financial modeling skills of your product craft. That's something that's become even easier to solve for than ever. So I think to bring it back to like where we all started, and I hope this applies to everyone here, find someone who thinks their way to the root of the problem. Pay attention to how they fight and stay standing in real tension. It's a feature, it's not a bug of being a PM. And figure out what someone truly cares about, because that will tell you almost everything about what they can thrive in and what they can or can't do. So if you're hiring, stop interviewing their resume. Like, there's a super generic signals. Look for the thin slices on these three signals. And if you're being hired, if you're looking to be hired or move positions, this is what heads of product like myself are actually looking for. It's not your logos, it's not really your stories. We're looking for you, the human being. So I think that brings me to the end of like my formal presentation on this, and I would love to sort of hear what you guys are thinking, whether you've got any feedback. We've got the Slido open, so if you've got any questions, I think we can jump into Q&A now if you're keen.
Okay, I think I will be the first one. I'm going to go off script, and this presentation was absolutely golden. Honestly, I will save it, and I will listen to it again. I will listen to it multiple times. Thank you so much
You're
for
too
this.
kind, Arun. You're too kind. Thank
No,
you.
no, it was really, really insightful. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Now
I appreciate it.
we're waiting for the Q&A. Let's give them a few minutes. I think I should share my screen now.
Go for it.
Okay. So let's start our Q&A session. You can find the Slido under that code or by scanning the QR on the screen. Meanwhile, as we wait for your questions, let's go through some of the use cases that Product People covers. So first, we offer interim or fractional support. This is when a company needs experienced product managers or product leaders for a limited period of time. For example, when hiring, it takes from 3 to 9 months. We can cover that. We cover parental leaves and also pushing forward urgent initiatives. Second, coaching and advisory support. This is more about helping product teams or product leaders improve how they work through coaching, clearer processes, etc. And finally, through product discovery support. This is when teams need help figuring out what to build next, validating opportunities, research, shaping pilots, shaping MVPs, etc. So that's it. And before moving into Q&A, I quickly share a few of the examples of the companies that we serve. So we serve B2B and B2C clients. These are one most notable B2C clients that we have. They include Blinkist, Scout24, eBay, DeepL, etc. As for B2B, we serve numerous clients like JetBrains, the World Health Organization, Remote, Sastrify, and many other examples. Now, last but not least, let's look a little bit at some of our stats. We have served more than 690 cross-functional teams within more than 100 clients. We have more than 40 product leaders and managers in-house. And we are proud to say that we have 59% women in the team, with 60% of leadership being women. And now I think we can officially start the Q&A session. We have a lot of questions. Yes, let's see. Okay, I'll give you the first one, Matt.
Go for it.
How should PMs who worked on internal tools, platform products, or boring products explain their impact in interviews?
I love it, and it's such an important question, and I think it's a really important one because you might feel like you work on boring products, but the truth is 90% of product managers work on boring products. So I think there's almost two techniques that you can use to explain your impact. The obvious one is sort of by talking about where things were before you started working on the problem, what problems you chose to work on, and the impact you had at the end. I'll tell you the one thing that's I would never over index on though, and that's how many man hours you saved. I know that's the really obvious one of like, hey, I made this process like 3 times more efficient. So I, got the payment operations person this much time back, or I saved the KYC analyst this much time. I don't really like those. And I'll tell you why, because the truth is the reason you were working on that was probably to enable some kind of strategic go-to-market push. Is usually where it is. So I think the smartest PMs, even if you're working on back-end processes or internal tooling ones, the reason we need the back-end tooling is to serve the core mission of our company, right? We're not doing it because we're bored. We're doing it because it enables some kind of strategic purpose. So what I usually look for is like, how do you connect that to the vision and the mission of the company? It's such a cop-out, but I'm sure you've all heard this sort of anecdote from the American space program in the 1960s, where I think it was whatever the acting president was walked into the NASA office and the janitor was there and he was like, "Oh, what do you do here?" And he's like, "I clean the floors so that, we can land a person on the moon, because without a clean, orderly environment, we can't do any of this amazing build work, and, we would delay the entire space program." And I think that's almost the story you're really looking for, is like, can you connect what you were working on to the key problems? OpEx is very seldomly the thing that drives a business forward. It's a cool thing to work on. It's very important, but connecting it back to like how that was enabling the revenue generating functions shows maturity in your thinking and understanding that you're not just a small part of a big machine. You're actually helping this machine achieve its purpose. So I think that's the one. Second is probably stay away from man hours, especially in this era of very high SaaS bills that most companies end up spending. I've worked with a founder where her entire value proposition in business is just auditing the SaaS bills and identifying opportunities to cut SaaS for companies. That's her whole startup, right? And she's got millions of dollars of funding in San Francisco for it. If you can pitch the work that you've done as a boring PM portfolio, I think you're in a really good place as well. It's tied back to not I was saving man hours, I was reducing strategic bills so we could we could redistribute that capital into our growth loops, or things like that is a much more compelling story, or how you rationalize agentic spend is much cooler. I hope that makes sense and that sort of answers your question. But again, you're not alone. 90% of PMs are there. So don't think like, oh, you're going to be ignored or no one cares because you worked on back office functions. It's about how you thought. It's the first principles thinking. If you can show that, you're as good as anyone who has the cool multi-million-dollar cool product launch.
Okay, there you have it, guys. So the second question is, what kind of questions reveal whether a PM can manage tension, trade-offs, and conflict? Genuinely curious.
Yeah, that's a big one, because I think we covered a lot of things there, both tension, trade-offs. I would almost So I think there's almost a few things you're asking for there. I think one is the obvious one, which is like, how do you make trade-offs? I think that's a particular product craft skill that you can drill into very separately. When, if someone's explaining a project they've worked on, you can just ask them point blank, like, hey, what was the hardest trade-off you had to make? And they'll give you an answer, they've rehearsed or not, and you can unpack that together, how deep the thinking goes using the 5 whys that I mentioned earlier. The emotional resilience is different. And I think, again, that requires way more work from the hiring manager because it's not a specific question. I'll give you an example of one PM who I interviewed earlier this year. She had taken a career break for a year and a bit. And she felt the need to bring that up before I did. I wasn't too interested in it. As I said earlier, I don't think it's a hallmark of whether someone's a good PM or not, but she brought it up and I sort of said, why was that the case? Why did you feel the need to tell me that? And she was like, well, because I'm scared it'll count against me. And I was like, why would that like count against you? And once we'd had a very honest conversation with ourselves after 10 minutes, what she had revealed to me was how she had spent a huge amount of time caring for her family, for a relative who was really sick, whilst balancing the demands of product management, couldn't quite make those two things work out and chosen one thing over another. And again, that's great. That shows amazing resilience and sort of a lot of authenticity and vulnerability. But the key was in really understanding, well, why are you coming back into the product market? Why are you choosing this? Because this is a really hard career and that product management's a lot of conflict. And I think that's almost the green slogan. It's almost what they don't say more than anything else. It requires a lot of paying attention. And I think there was someone there who had a question Slido without turning into a vague personality assessment. In a way, you kind of do have to turn it into a vague personality assessment. And I think that's the truth. Everyone has a conflict style, right? And figuring out what proxies you can get to as a hiring manager to understand that is very helpful. There's no right or wrong answers, but there are better context for teams. Some teams have very high context culture. Other teams have very low context culture. Some, the key stakeholders is engineering, where specificity is super important. Others, it's more about strategy setting and charting a path forward because people have no idea what the roadmap should look like. There, your stress tolerance for ambiguity needs to be super high. There's no generic one-size-fits-all question there. It's really understanding the PM that will succeed here can navigate ambiguity, or they can fight with really technical people because they can communicate specifically, right? So maybe you can call those vague personality tests. I think to me, they're almost traits someone has to have to succeed in a role. And that's going to be so specific per hiring manager. But you know how you can figure that out when you're going through an interview process? Ask them exactly that. So on the flip side, as a candidate, ask them verbatim, what will be the difference between a good PM in this role or a bad PM in this role? Or rephrase it, how would I have to conflict excellently with my key stakeholders? One, it shows that you're mature in your thinking, that you understand that this isn't super easy. And two, they'll be forced to give you an honest answer because either they've thought about it and they've got the rehearsed answer that says, oh, the director of sales is really difficult because they have a low tolerance for, hypothetical bets and they want super clear financial projections over 6 months. And we really struggle to model that. Or they're going to be put on the spot and have to be honest with you, right? So either way, you win because you learn something about the team and what's really at stake. So I would say flip it around. And if you're not sure what the right answer is, just ask them point blank, like, what do I have to have? And you'll have a more authentic conversation. You'll build trust with the hiring manager. I hope that makes sense. It's a long answer, but it was a good question.
It makes perfect sense. So Matt, it seems like I'm not the only one that liked the presentation, and we're getting spammed with questions. Do you want to choose the ones to answer, or should I keep it going one by one?
You choose the ones to answer. I
Okay.
trust your judgment.
Okay. The next one should be, when a candidate talks only about wins, how do you push them into the messy parts of the story?
Yeah, it's a good one. Sometimes you just have to call it. As you can tell, I'm a big believer in authenticity. Um, to bring it back to like what it's like being a PM, you guys will know that things are very seldomly simple, right? Even if there's a simple answer to the question, getting people to buy into it can be hard. Sometimes just finding the right thing to build can take you weeks. The people who just, forgive my language, cut the bullshit and get straight to the chase, I have a lot of respect for. So that's what I do in hiring as well. if I feel like they're only telling me all the good stuff, I tell them that. I'm just like, hey man, this is awesome. I was like, you crushed it. This is flipping cool. I'm so impressed. Genuinely, it's great. But sometimes I just ask them point blank. I was like, what was the worst one you've ever done? And I was like, because I feel, and you can almost just be very honest and say, I feel like I haven't seen of you to like get a read on how good you are as a PM. So I'm going to ask you to share a really shitty story with me so that I have a better idea of how you handle this. And it's okay just to be honest. If I can't be honest with you in an interview and you can't be honest with me, like, what are we doing? We're just, we may as well not be talking to each other. So I think sometimes it's just to call them out on it and just be like, hey man, I really want to hear about like the worst one you've done. And for different people, that can be what made you most angry, what was most frustrating project has worked really well for some people. And otherwise flip it to like, what was the most disappointing one? And often you find the reason they were disappointed was, there were some really key lessons they learned. And I was like, oh, flip, that's awesome. That tells me they really care about A, B, and C, or, it reveals a lot of their emotional resilience in terms of the project that disappointed them the most. It tells you like what gets them going as a PM, like where they want to sit, what stakeholders they're biased to hanging out with. These are all really valuable signals for figuring out whether you fit into a team or not. Yeah.
Yes, totally agree. This is a tough one coming up. So, how do you interview for resilience, motivation, and judgment without turning it into vague personality assessment?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Um, I think it depends where you are in the hiring process. If it's the first interview, like no one's ever going to figure that out. That's just the truth. Like you don't have enough time to figure that out. But I think if you're sort of the final stage of an interview process for a PM position and you're talking more about culture fit, a lot of them call it, or it will be the bar raiser, which are all very vague terms that basically do exactly that, like do the personality assessment, if you will. Um, to me, there's no one size fits all. Some companies try to force this by asking you why you left all your previous roles. I honestly think that doesn't really tell me much. Sometimes it's just company restructured, startup, shut down, run out of money. Like, these are not things which were within your control. So I don't pay too much attention to that. Um, I think to me, a lot about what it is one, you can just ask them point blank, like, why do you want this job, man? Like, I have a million candidates who could do this thing. What do you get out of it, right? Like, what do you get out of this, right? What do you hope to learn? And sometimes people are honest with you, sometimes they're not. I think the biggest ones, to be frank, that are common themes within hiring for this is line management experience or not. Some PMs really want to become group product managers and run large organizations. Some that might be expected, but they actually just don't have the intrinsic desire to do that. And it comes across in the absence. I need to know whether you're a player, you're a coach, you're a player coach, or you want to be the football manager who's completely sitting on the sidelines and just orchestrating things from far away. And that's kind of how I like to think about it, is where you fit on that. I'd love to say I have a perfect way of doing this with everyone. I don't. You just have to have an honest conversation, man. It starts off with chatting about like, where in the world are you from? And like, you know, what do you like? What do you not like? What are their hobbies, etc. You'll learn way more about someone's vibe, what they're about, whether you feel like you want to hang out with this person at the office. That's really the culture fit, man. It's like you can't fake this stuff. It's like if everyone in the office is watching the Football World Cup and you'd rather be playing chess, then that's a potential trade-off the hiring manager has to make, right? Of like, well, this is what everyone else likes. Do you fit in? That is a vague personality assessment, but the truth is that's how they're making decisions. So I think just being authentic there is really important. Um, and the motivation, yeah, it's a tough one. But like I said, I flex that to every candidate uniquely. It's based on their history, it's based on their experience, it's based on the seniority of the role. I care way more about that the more senior someone is. A senior PM needs to have a very clear why for what they want to do this role and what they want out of it. an associate PM who's just starting out, it's probably because they think being a PM is cool and they want to figure this thing out, right? Like, so I think it really depends with the level of maturity. If you're applying for a senior product manager role, a lead or a group role, even a head of, you need to have a very clear why. And a personal experience from my story, I once lost out on a directorship position at Adobe. I had gone through 10 interviews for that directorship position at Adobe. And I got a message from the hiring team saying, oh, we just have one more thing to do. It's an informal coffee chat, a vibe check, a vague personality test with the hiring manager. He just wants to catch up with you and find out how you're doing after doing 10 interviews with this company. And I did that call with him, and he asked me, I think, one question on like why I wanted to do this and not anything else. He didn't like my answer, and I didn't get the role. I was number 2 in that. There were 2 people left in the funnel. It was me and one other guy, and I didn't get the offer. And when I asked at the end why, and he was so why I didn't get the role, I thought I was the favorite. And he's like, Matt, he's like, I asked you one simple question of like, why do you want this thing? And he was like, it was for a director position, and you couldn't clearly articulate why you wanted to be in this team and have this role and do this job and what you were getting out for it. And he was like, the other guy did. And he's like, so why would I pick you over him? He's like, it doesn't matter, again, how well you interviewed, everyone loved you, but like, again, I had failed his motivation test. I'd failed the why do you care test. So again, personal story that bit me. It's always stuck with me, and it's very true. So I think you do have to flex it to each candidate, but the fact is, when you're that far down a hiring decision, it does feel pretty vague, but it is very personal. So I don't know if that satisfies you, but I think that's just a very honest and vulnerable answer to the question. Like, by that point, you have to have your why and understand it deeply. If you don't, it comes across, man. It just feels like you're interviewing with 20 companies, and this is just one of your options. I kind of prefer the candidates who just tell me that up front.
Perfect, perfect. Amazing answer. I think you like answered 4 of the other questions with that answer.
I hope
So
so.
let's take one last question, and it's a small one. How can you bring out these attributes in your CV, as that is the step where most candidates get rejected now?
Yeah, it's super true. And I think don't take for granted how much automatic screening plays into this. Look, we could have an entire another section on how to optimize your CV or your resume to sort of get noticed by recruiters. But I think the key thing to put in there that most people don't in their CVs is who were your stakeholders. So a very simple one, if you're describing an amazing project you worked on, say it was, we'll pick an internal project, you were building a fraud monitoring or compliance monitoring dashboard. It's awesome. The business case makes sense to me. Anyone who's been in business for a long time understands why this matters. Put in who your stakeholders were. If you put in like forced trade-offs with chief revenue officer, chief risk officer, payment operations team, or KYC compliance analyst, it gives the hiring manager and the hiring team a very clear proxy for the kind of stakeholders that you're used to communicating with. That shows us the kind of senior, the kind of level of conversations you can hold and host. You get that way more if you just put that into your CV than if you didn't. So that would be my advice, is put in the stakeholders who you had to convince as part of that, even if you're using the standard sort of like situation, action you took, outcomes of like progress thing that you would usually follow for your CV. Put in as part of your situation the key people you had to convince, and that goes a long way to showing the trade-offs, potentially the resilience you needed. The more senior people's titles are, the more ego there is in the room, the more it becomes a game of the rational argument doesn't always win, because now you're playing with the politics of someone's reputation or their team's reputation, or etc. It's a small one, but it makes a big difference for me. It helps me figure out who you've had to, how you've had to make trade-offs, and sort of like the kind of heated conversations you might have had. It's better than someone who doesn't mention it.
Perfect. Amazing answer. So I
Cool.
think we answered all the questions and we're on time. So I really want to thank you, Matt, for this very insightful presentation. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone learned a lot. So thanks a lot for coming. Thanks to the audience for coming and assisting in this presentation. I would like to remind everyone that we're hiring. We're hiring for PMs, for APMs. So feel free to scan the QR code. You can check also our careers page in our website. Uh, Also, we have our newsletter, so I would like to invite everyone to subscribe to our newsletter. We share a lot of insights, a lot of knowledge from our experience with our clients and the companies we work with. So that would be very insightful, especially for the audience of this live stream. Okay, so I think we can go and wrap up. Thanks again a lot, Matt. I would like to invite everyone to next week's live stream with Giuseppe Ladamoda. I hope I pronounced that right. Who will be sharing with us his guide on being first product manager in a startup. Make sure that you join us and